AI is not about buying a microwave. AI is about putting electricity into your house. Yes, we want use cases, and we need to have use cases to deliver some kind of outcome. That's important. And how do we AI-fy BPM? And I believe our adoption rate is up to like 80%, meaning 80% of BPMers are using Copilot on a daily basis for something.
What should accounting leaders be prioritizing now to stay future ready?
AI is not going to be the AI in 3 or 4 years. So quantum computing is on the horizon, and it'll probably follow the same timeline that AI did. We'll all say, we built our whole practice on AI and everything is AI integrated, and now we have cloud computing that can do it in a 1/10 of a second of what AI does in 5 minutes. So I think there's an opportunity, and where we need to focus is build your AI strategy and then start thinking about how does this convert into an overall tech strategy.
You've been tuned in to AI Native Accounting, powered by Digits, the world's first autonomous general ledger. Unlock automation for bookkeeping, reporting, client collaboration, and more. Let Digits handle the tedium so you can focus on high-impact client services. See why AI Native Accounting starts with Digits. Try it for free today at digits.com.
Welcome to the AI Native Accounting Podcast presented by Digits. I'm your host, Kacee Johnson, principal at B Radical, and I'm joined today by Lindsay Stevenson, the Chief Transformation Officer at BPM, a top 50 firm where Lindsay drives cultural evolution and innovation. Lindsay, welcome. I am so glad to have you here.
Oh, Kacee, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super, super excited. I'm part of the new Kacee and everything that you've been working on, so this is really cool.
Well, we go back, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, we've done podcasts, we've sat on committees, advisory boards, LinkedIn Lives, presentations. I mean, every conversation that I ever have with you, I feel like there's some magic, like dynamic discussions. So I couldn't wait to get you on. So thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Now, last time that we sat down together, we dove into, it was like when AI was really starting to take form. And I was really curious about the change management piece of it. What's changed for you personally? That was almost 2 years ago, actually, which is sad. We needed to do them on a much more frequent cadence. But what's changed for you personally, and how you lead since AI has become central to not just BPM's strategy, but it's really helping to evolve the profession as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's how we think about AI. So, I mean, we're still in the infancy. We say 2 years ago, but it's really incredible to me to think it's that slow burn. You know, if you look at the adoption curve, I feel like 2 years ago we were still in that, like, it really hasn't taken off yet. The really early innovators were really thinking about what they could do, but most of us were sort of like, cool, ChatGPT is the new Google. And I feel like 2 years later, we're just now starting to head up that curve, right? Where we're like, whoa, there's some really cool things. So as I think about the change management, some of that is just acceptance and acknowledgement of it being something more than a replacement tool for Google. And I think we finally, at least at BPM, probably from a profession perspective, and it's probably been pushed more by our vendors than it has by us, because they're starting to experiment with it and we're seeing the results of that. But really, I think that change management component, we've sort of overcome I don't really need to worry about AI. I'll figure it out when it comes to me, or when it comes my way, when it's integrated into the tools I'm already using. I think we're now finally getting to that phase of like, oh, AI is going to be a part of how I function. I should probably start figuring out what that means, or how it works, or how it can be utilized. So it's kind of exciting, because I feel like we were just in this really slow burn, and it felt like you were kind of trying to swim against the current, like telling everyone, come on, this is going to be so great, come with me. And then, you know, everybody's like, I'm floating, I'm still floating, I'm good, I don't need to do that. And it's getting a little bit more where like people are starting to say like, hey, that's kind of cool. Okay, tell me more. And so the change management side is now, I think, actually harder, because now people are like, okay, I'm ready. What do you have for me? And we're like, whoa, oh, crud. Like, they want solutions, they want results. Like, now what are we going to do? So just a little bit different. And instead of trying to get people to adopt and accept, now it's more like, can we even respond and deliver as quickly as we're getting, you know, sort of that pressure to do that?
And I'm curious with that pressure to start using stuff, are you hearing it from clients as well as internal staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think just in the profession, right? I don't work directly with our clients, so I don't want to speak to, what those day-to-day conversations are, but I think our clients are being pressured to use it in their businesses. And then they're coming to us with like, well, how are you doing it? What does this look like? And we're kind of looking around going, I mean, we don't have it figured out, right? We're on the journey too, so we're trying to do it together. And then there's some specialists in the profession that has been really interesting to see, like these are now becoming service lines. And so we have firms that are developing AI driven service lines, which if you would have asked 2 years ago, I would have been like, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But we do, right? There's some firms that are doing AI driven assurance work. There's some firms that are doing AI consulting work and systems work. And so that's really exciting to see that. And I think it's going to inspire our traditionalists in the CPA world to say, okay, here's some opportunity. This is sort of like the new advisory service line that we can tap into.
And how incredible is it that business owners or leaders are coming to CPA firms for that advice? I mean, that's incredible. Let's celebrate that.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. And I think it's such a cool, innovative way to take some of like your newer people in the profession that have a tech love and want to be part of tech and do something in tech and also in that business advisor space.
Yeah.
This is a new opportunity for them. Like what a great attraction point for us in the profession.
And yeah, for those students or potential students that they've got those old ideas about what it means to be a CPA. So I hope we can get this more out there for people to hear. Okay, so back in 2023, you flagged change fatigue as a major risk. And you emphasized at the same time the power of creative connections as a way through it. How have you seen that prediction play out at BPM, and what new hurdles are you facing?
I mean, I think change fatigue is a chronic challenge. I don't know that we'll ever fully overcome what that looks like in our groups and in our teams and when we're trying to implement or even consider what's possible because everything is changing so quickly. So that change fatigue just comes from it feels like every time we turn around, there's something new in our profession. So like our tax team, right? There was just a fairly large tax bill with some big implications. And so they're looking at it and saying, gosh, what do our clients need to know? How do we change the way that we serve them? What else do we need to provide them with? What do we need to be thinking about? So in the typical traditional way, there's change happening significantly. And then just on the business model side, like in the profession, there's a lot of things. I think we talked about that too in 2023 around this idea of business models and how does that look different? The way we lead our firms, the way that we serve our clients, the way that we build our teams to serve those clients are all questions that we're consistently asking over and over again. And I don't think that's going to shift. I think that is going to be a constant state of consideration. And that change fatigue is not going to go anywhere. I do believe that the connection piece, being able to have sort of your tribe, your people that you can go to and be like, oh my gosh, this thing is changing again. Oh my gosh, we need new software because this software isn't going to do the thing that we need to do that now serves our clients. What do we even need to think about? What do we even need to do when you have a group of people that are like, I've just accepted that change is part of our role. If you can get to that point, then you've got like just this tribe that you can go back into and they say, yep, I hear you. I'm tired too. And what can we do next? What does that look like? What do we need to think about? How can we do this in like a planned, intentional way? That takes some of the fatigue out of the equation. I think chaos is what really tips that fatigue over into like, you know what? I'm just not going to do it. When it's chaotic, like I can't take anymore. I don't know. There's no plan around this. I don't feel like I'm engaged. I don't know what to do. So that intention and those connection points are really helping navigate the fatigue that we really can't ever get away from. It's just, change is just happening. It's just all every day, all day.
It does get overwhelming 100%. Now, I understand BPM has an AI committee, though. Is that right?
Well, I think the last time we talked, we were working on creating one. Then we didn't, and we sort of regrouped and we were like, what do we need to do? And so actually what ended up happening is we had these internal conversations around AI as a culture, and we just didn't have a culture where like AI felt like it fit. So one was the change fatigue and constantly adopting new things, like that gets overwhelming. And here's one more thing you have to take on, and now it's AI. But we really wanted to do a grassroots approach. So actually, our IT team led just getting Copilot into the firm and being something that people kind of worked with in just regular everyday ways, not some big initiative, not a big overhaul, but just getting people comfortable with what AI can do in a really small individual contribution way. And so we've been doing that for about the last year. And we just got some data back, and our IT team will probably kill me if I don't get this right. But I believe our adoption rate is up to like 80%, meaning 80% of BPMers are using Copilot on a daily basis for something, which is a huge swing for us as a firm, because when we first rolled it out, everybody was like, I never use Copilot. It doesn't do what I want. I wanted it. And they were starting with these crazy big things. Like, I wanted to automate this whole process. Well, that's a bigger ask than, can you draft this email for me based on these 3 bullet points? Right? So we were trying to bridge that gap. And so now we actually, I think, are at the maturity. We have just been having conversations in the last month of like, okay, now we're ready for like some AI strategy and some intention and some bigger picture AI opportunities, which would then, the AI committee. Do we have a committee? Is the committee the right thing? Is it not really a committee? Is it more like certain individuals are responsible for certain components and they meet, but they each have their own decision-making matrix? What does that look like? And so we're just starting that journey of like, how do we want to make sure that we manage it going forward? Because it's now become a cultural fit for BPM, and our BPMers are ready to use AI. So we feel better positioned to be able to do something intentional and bigger picture.
So how, and I know your CIO, Mo, I'm sure deals with this a lot too. How do you and Mo and the other leaders that are looking at the overarching strategy of any, not just AI, but any kind of technology or initiative and change, when you've got specific service lines that are wanting to drive something, if you don't have a formalized AI committee, how are you guys approaching that so that it's still collaborative across the different groups?
Yeah, so it's a little bit multi-pronged right now. So we have had a PMO for maybe 3 years now, maybe 2.5. So currently everything goes through the PMO. So any ask, whether it's AI or something else. So we do have a process around submit this thing, explain the business case, give us the ROI, what problem are you trying to solve? And there is a committee related to that of just looking at it and saying, well, we actually have a solution that solves that already. We need to just point them in that direction. Or, wow, that's something new. We should consider that. And then it goes through like our whole process of like, how do we actually get it implemented and part of our suite? So it's currently sort of following that. But now that we have matured and we have more excitement and adoption around just AI in general, we are definitely at the maturity point of we need like an AI strategy and an intake process that's specific for AI because it's moving so quickly. So the PMO process is a slower move. It's a bigger picture, firm-wide, new HIRS system type thing versus I want an agent that does X, Y, and Z. Okay, is that a good firm resource use of ETS's time to build that agent for you, or is there 15 other agents that would be more practical or more impactful for the firm? So we are just now starting that journey. We've got a great PM in our IT team that's been thinking through that. What does that process look like? How would we be agile? How can we make sure that it's like quick response, quick decision making? So I don't have an answer for like the how do you do it. I just know that like if you set up a process and the intent is agility, that's the first place to start. Because with AI, you cannot, the old PMO process approach, which is great for system-wide implementation for firm-wide level efforts, not as practical and applicable for AI, which is like in the moment, can we do this and how do we skill people up? So it's kind of twofold. So one is that intake and committee process. The other is how do we empower our entire BPM team to play in the space? So like with Copilot now, every person in the firm can create a pretty simple agent. So like 2 weeks ago, I created a Copilot agent that basically walks you through how to change client information in a source system. So I say, I need to update my client's email. And it responds back and says, great, I need your client ID and the client name. And then you give it. And then it says, great, what exactly do you want to change? And then you say what I want to change. And then it says, that's super. which system should that go in? Is it for a billing? Is it for engagement letter? Is it for multiple, right? So you can select. And then it says, okay, this is what I got from you. Is that correct? And you say yes, and it creates the email that you can send to the team to put it in our queue for updating. So like little things like that are like easy for our team to start playing with. And so we're creating that space for them to start playing with it and doing things that are like individualized. We don't yet have a strategy for scaled.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious if you guys have a place for team members to share those wins and those experiences with it, or if they tried something in AI and it didn't work.
Yeah. So when we first launched Copilot, we have, I mean, I'm sure every firm has this, but there's like Teams channels and Yammer and all those kind of like, so we have community spaces. And that's what we've started with, is to say like, hey, this is the community space for I'm tinkering with AI agents, and you can share what worked and what different. How did you build it? What did you say? There's two different ways you can do it. If you're tech advanced, you could actually like code and create. If you're not, like myself, you can like actually do an interview with an agent that helps you build an agent, right? So there's all these cool different ways that people are talking about the ways in which they're doing it. And then there's practice groups that are being, starting to be intentional of like, what's an agent for our practice group? What's something that could really move the needle for us from a practice group level of like, this thing takes a lot of time and we could create an agent that helps us do that 30% faster. So they're starting to do that on the group level, which is pretty exciting to see. But again, how do we correlate and bring all that together? Work in progress. We're figuring that out as we go. But we really wanted to create the culture first and make sure it was something that our people wanted to engage with before we were like, look at all this AI stuff, here's the process, because we didn't think they'd engage.
Yeah. And I do want to get into culture and people because I know it's at the core of everything that you do and drive. But what are some unexpected challenges that you face in implementing AI at scale? I mean, how large is BPM? About 2,000 employees?
No, we're about 1,200-ish, global, right? So like the component of like the doesn't work in the US, it might not work in the UK or Canada or in Bangalore. So I think that the one of the largest challenges to scale is around that duplication of efforts, right? So we took the approach of wanting to build the culture piece, which empowered people to start playing and testing and creating. We are likely going to end up in a situation where we have 20 agents that do the same thing, essentially, but they were created by 20 different people because we really didn't have like a lab, where all that happens and you can see what other people have created and done already. So I think that's a challenge that we didn't anticipate people solving for the same thing. We were like, let's get them empowered and testing and playing, and it's going to be so great. We're going to have all these cool ideas. And then we're like, oh, dang, like duplicated efforts happened here, So I think that is currently a challenge with 1,200 people. It's hard to figure out how to manage that. Like, how do we control it and still give them the innovative space to create and play? We don't want to stifle that. So I think that's a challenge that we weren't necessarily really prepared for, of like how much excitement there was around solving their issues. And then we were like, oh, we should have like a place where they could do that. And so we're working on that now. And then I think the other challenge with any kind of scaling of AI is, are we solving for the right thing? And there's so much that you can do, right, from automation to controlled interview capture, right? Like AI does so much more than just like the replacement of Google. Document generation, right? Like revising based on documents that you pull in. There's just like a huge amount of things that we can solve. So prioritizing impact, I think, is something that we weren't necessarily super prepared for. We knew it, we kind of like it was out there, but we really didn't actively say, okay, like how are we going to assess? Like, what's the matrix? So we had that for the typical PMO submission, but we really hadn't thought it through for AI of like, how do we know what impact is? Like, how would we define ROI? And how should we prioritize? Because these are quick moving things, right? Like the risk is they're going to solve on their own if we don't provide a space that's agile and quick to respond. Even if the response is, we're already building something for that, stay tuned, right? Like it has to be quick response because they have access to Copilot and agents, and like they'll go solve for it themselves. And again, we end up with 20 solutions that do the same thing. So I think we weren't fully ready for like, how do we prioritize and make sure we're doing the right thing with the right time, with the right impact, because we could solve for so much, but then we solve for nothing when we try and solve for everything.
Yeah, no, and in the competing priorities, that's a problem across all organ. I was at a company doing a workshop and we ran this whole exercise. They had the exact same problem. Competing priorities, everything, seemed to be the same. And we did like a kill it, speed it up, continue, park it, like exercise. And I feel like you have to do that on a regular basis, or else everything is of equal fire, right?
Yeah, it's an equal importance. And it depends on who's in the room, right? Like, I mean, to your point, if you have like tax says this is the biggest priority for tax, we need this right now, we need it yesterday. Assurance is telling you the same thing, advisory is telling you the same thing, your CST groups are telling you the same thing, and you're like, it's all important. Like, so now I'm halfway doing 4 different initiatives and I'm not giving it the attention it deserves. And so like, how do we pull back from that? And then how do we set expectations for our colleagues? Because it sucks to be a BPMer and have this really great idea and you push it forward and you're like, yeah, that's great, but we're not going to do it because it doesn't have the impact, because you weren't able to clearly indicate like what the impact should be, which is just like an experience thing, right? So like the pitch that I'm going to make is going to be different than the pitch that an A1 from assurance is going to make, because I have 10 years of experience of making the pitch. So like finding a way to get through that noise is just really challenging, and making sure the right people are in the room, like who ultimately, which I think is the biggest challenge for any organization that's talking about AI and looking at your strategy and AI governance. At the end of the day, who has the delegated responsibility and authority to be the final decision maker? And that is a big job, and it's intense and it can be overwhelming, but it has to be a someone, because otherwise it will just go over around in a loop and a loop and a loop, right? Like, I didn't like your answer, so I went to like this person who has authority over, I don't know, 3 other things, and you view them as someone who has authority over you, so they're going to tell you to just get it done. Like, that's the cycle that we find ourselves in. For, I think any organization is struggling with that, because AI it's new. I mean, it's still new, which is so funny that we're talking about it 2 years later, but it's still new. We're still trying to figure it out.
And back to your point at the beginning, and it's moving so fast, so it does feel overwhelming at times. Now, I'm curious, so at what cadence do you guys meet on that to evaluate how it, so that you don't end up in that hamster wheel?
I mean, so we, like I said, we're just starting our journey around our AI strategy. So we're meeting, I feel like it's every day. There's a group of us that are meeting and talking about like, what is the thing? How will we approach this? What do we need to tell other people if we do prioritize this? And having lots of conversations. I'm hoping that 6 months from now, if we had the same conversation, I could tell you, this is our structure. This is the decision-making authority that's been determined. And this is the cycle that it goes through. I can tell you our PMO meets once a week. So like for regular firm submissions, like we have a once a week cadence where we look at submissions and determine like, is this green lit? Does it need to be put in the parking lot? Is this just a hard no? And that group is together once a week to filter through those.
But it sounds like it's just an ongoing conversation.
We haven't been very good, I think, as a profession. So this isn't just a BPM thing. I mean, even when I'm out and about in the profession, we're not really great at letting go of something. So like our strength is, we are definitely opportunity grabbers. I think as a profession, knowing when there's an opportunity to seize it, to jump on it, to engage with it, we're really good in that space. And I think some of it is just because like regulatory stuff changes all the time. So we've just been conditioned to be like, oh, it's changing. Okay, I got to dig in and figure that out. We forget to let go of things. So we have like this accumulation of like all this manual stuff or all the processes that we used to do. And like we still are doing it while trying to be innovative and jump on the opportunity. And it's overwhelming. So I think where I hope as a profession we get to be really good is that like letting go. Like we're not going to do that thing. So to your point, that exercise of kill it, like
yeah,
when are we going to
have no more?
Yes, yeah. Like when are we going to have the kill it conversation? Because your plate's only so big. right? So like if we keep adding to the plate, like at some point, like something has to come off the plate, but we're not great at the kill it conversation because we think in terms of like sunk and committed costs, right? We invested so much energy, so much time, so many dollars into that thing. We can't possibly walk away, even though we all acknowledge that thing is painful and not working. We just can't let it go because we feel like we put so much energy and effort into it. So I think that AI actually is a great opportunity for the profession to sort of see the value of, I'm going to let that go. Like, I don't need to send my client 7 emails. I can use an AI solution to like check in and give me feedback without me having to take the time to do that. And like, I'm going to let that go. Like, it's not a good client experience. I've convinced myself that it's how we do things. So, but I'm going to let that go. I hope we get there because I think AI lets us consider that.
Well, let's be honest, no client wants to receive 7 emails. Like,
They don't, right?
They
They don't even want one email. They'd rather have a phone call for 5 minutes than they would have an email, right? So like it's a really interesting dynamic that like when we think about client touch. But anyway, that's for another podcast.
That's a whole different discussion. Absolutely. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about culture and transformation because I know you're very passionate about it and you've done an amazing job leading and you're a good voice just in the profession about some of these issues. So you've been a champion of DEIB initiatives and organizational purpose. How has the intersection between AI, driven transformation we're just all overwhelmed with, and DEIB evolved in the past few years?
I mean, it's a challenge, not just from the AI perspective, but DEIB in general is a challenge to navigate today, right? As things change politically and in society, how do you show up? What does that mean? What do you want to deliver? So I think that has been really, really difficult to consider. What AI has brought to that conversation, though, is it's much easier for me to find and digest what's actively happening in the marketplace around inclusion and belonging. So BPM has stayed committed to our inclusion and belonging efforts. It's a cornerstone of who we are. I mean, our brand promise is because people matter. So it's literally woven into the fabric of how we show up. And so we've been really committed to, like, we didn't make any shifts in our programming. We didn't change any of our initiatives. In fact, we increased our investment budgets for our colleague resource groups in the midst of all that, because our thought process was like, our people need us more now than ever. They really need to know that, like, we as a firm believe in people mattering. And so we will continue to show up that way. And inclusion and belonging is a cornerstone to letting people know they matter. So AI has actually helped me collate and digest what's happening in the marketplace and what we see with companies that chose to make shifts, companies that leaned in harder, like executive orders. There was some language around that, like, how do we respond? It's been really beneficial to just know what's happening in real time so that we can make really good decisions as an in-committee. So we have a committee that's committed to inclusion and belonging here. And then on the other side is, we've actually been exploring how do we help our colleague resource groups. Today, they are primarily focused on, like, celebrating, educating, empowering. And we also want to include impacting the business. And AI is an opportunity as a first connection point on that, of how do we make sure that we avoid some of that bias that gets built into, like, whoever builds the AI, right, is like their inherent bias created in that. So when we're creating solutioning around how do we want to use AI, what are we using it for, actively engaging the colleagues that are in those communities that represent our resource groups helps to make sure that we don't end up with, white middle-class Lindsay building a bot that responds and engages in a way that is completely not helpful to someone in a different community that does not understand her slang or her weirdness or whatever it is that that has shown up. And so that's been, like, a really cool thing to think about, of, like, that's a business case, right? Like, it's beyond an initiative or a program, and it gets into, like, it is a fabric of how we operate our business and why it matters. And AI has brought that to, like, I think, a faster reality for us.
And isn't that funny that the tools, the software is what is ultimately still keeping you human at your core focused. I love that.
Yeah,
Good for you.
really.
Now, and I saw there was actually there, because I'm really passionate about, like, there's like this clear link between diversity efforts and innovation, right? And I saw a report by McKinsey, and it said that the firms in the top quartile for gender diversity in executive roles outperform those that do not by 27% financially, which is astounding. Um, and I know that you guys are fantastic, with your gender diversity at the leadership level. How has that increased representation at your leadership levels changed how BPM pursues innovation initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's twofold. So it's been interesting because I think we've leaned even harder into, for sure on the gender front, into that leadership component. We do actually have great representation at our leadership levels, both executive and partner, comparatively in the profession. But we also recognize that we're not where we want to be, and so there's opportunity for growth there. And so we've seen internal teams taking the initiative to say, what are we doing to build our pipeline? So we actually have a group of women partners who have gotten together and said, we want to do something intentional around building women in our pipeline for partnership, and like gone to the practice group leaders and gotten their buy-in of like, we want it to be intentional. And so that's just like in its infancy. They're just ideating around like, what does that look like? But it's so cool to see it's not firm driven. It's people driven at BPM, where they've just said, like, we see this and the firm supports this, and here's how we want to show up in that way. So I think there's that component. But then on like the innovation side, again, you see individuals from different backgrounds when they start having candid conversations, when they start getting that psychological safety to say what they really think or to poke holes in something that someone else brings to the table, the result of that outcome is significantly, exponentially better than how it looked when it started. And we're seeing that fairly regularly when we can inspire teams to get together and actually push back on each other. We're seeing seriously different results than what we were getting before. And not that what we were getting before sucked. It didn't.
Yeah, of course.
It is significantly more measurable.
Yeah. You brought up, because on the culture thread, you brought up earlier about the international piece. BPM continues, international expansion. How do you approach the transformation and the culture aligning, and even on the technology front, but across borders?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think in the beginning, us and probably every other firm was very committed to this, like really acknowledging we can be BPM1 and also be unique and dynamic in different geographies with different cultures in different time zones, and still holding true to the core value piece. Right. So like it used to be, we're all going to be on one software. That's shifted in like the last 2 years. And we've really leaned into this, like, let's do best in class and what delivers best in that geography or for that purpose. And then figure out how do we like integrate and create reporting that makes sense and be able to do it. So like we just launched our UK office. And if you're not familiar, UK is significantly different from a people perspective than the US. So like their typical work hour in the CPA profession is different for their work week. How they track and manage clients, their billing model is different. And so instead of, well, we're just going to copy paste what we do in the US and this is how we're going to do it in the UK, the partners there and our operations team had really good conversations about, well, how do we show up in a way that's consistent with that local culture and we're still staying true to what's really important to BPM. And they found strategies to make that work. Now we're testing. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be successful. We're only in like month 5 or 6 of having an office there. So TBD. But I will tell you that the experience, the onboarding, how those partners are engaging with us has been so positive. So it's already just the way we're working and collaborating together. And again, I think that comes back to that creating psychological safety among multicultural teams to really speak up and say like, yeah, that isn't really working for us. And here's why. Can we consider something that's aligned but different? So it's like that centralized, decentralized approach to like, how can we be both? What does that look like?
And not forcing, to fit into a box when in their region, like it would just feel very unnatural. I think it probably take away from their enjoyment, their productivity, all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally true. And a dynamic team, right? So as you start adding, it's not just our client facing folks that we hire in different geographies. Now we're also expanding our operational folks in those different geographies. So now you're talking about like, is HR in Bengaluru led by HR Bengaluru? Is it led by the US? Like, how do those components work together? And they've been really innovative and flexible. So they're trying new things. So they say, okay, let's try it this way. And if something of that doesn't work, they're willing to tweak and pivot and see what else could work. So I just love that the team is willing to try, fail, learn, experiment, try, fail, learn until they kind of get to that, this is working, ebb and flow. So it's been cool to watch.
Yeah. Agility trumps ability. And I am hearing that a lot in this thread. So I want to, in the past, I got a lot of predictions from you and looking ahead. So I want to look ahead a little bit with you. Now, you sit on the AI CPA board and you're an active volunteer, and I can't even imagine how many committees and advisory boards you're on right now. You volunteer a lot. What should accounting leaders be prioritizing now to stay future ready?
So I think that there is a need, for sure, start with your AI strategy, only because I think it sets a foundation for you to think about like very quickly shifting tech. But the bigger picture, and I think the thing that we need to be ready for and consider is like AI is not going to be the AI in 3 or 4 years, right? So quantum computing is on the horizon, and that's going to be another earth-shattering thing, right? And it'll probably follow the same timeline that AI did. There'll be the early adopters, and then it'll feel like it exploded into reality for most of us and be overwhelming. And we'll all say, we built our whole practice on AI and everything is AI integrated. And now we have cloud computing that can do it in a tenth of a second of what AI does in 5 minutes, right? So now how do we look at that? So I think there's an opportunity in where we need to focus is build your AI strategy and then start thinking about how does this convert into an overall tech strategy? How can you replicate this so that you have a model for new technologies in general? So it's not just about AI. I mean, it's easy to start with AI because it's tangible and it's actionable and we have like use cases. So it makes it a little bit more tangible for people to digest. But really moving forward, I think 3-5 years from now, we will be again on this podcast talking about quantum computing or something else that we don't even know is in production in the back end that hasn't hit the mainstream marketplace yet. But there will be some next thing. And we will all be sitting here saying, oh my gosh, how do I restructure my firm model to work with this? How do I think about like how I serve my clients with this? Like, I don't even know what to do. If we have a tech-agile framework and a strategy built around being tech-agile and how we test new tech and how we think about new tech, we are better positioned than we were for AI. I mean, we talked about AI for 5 years and none of us did anything. We all said, oh yeah, I'll get to it. We'll get there. And I think there's going to continue to be, whether it's cloud computing or something else, there will continue to be that new tech that's sneaking up behind us. And if we're focused on just the actual tech itself, instead of our bigger picture around tech agility, we're going to regret that.
I was on an interview earlier today, and the technologist he was driving into digital twins. So it's going to be something else after this, 100%.
It will be. And I think like blockchain and crypto, they're all going to play a role in this dynamic around like, how can you create your systems and your people to be tech agile? Like what kind of, are we creating that culture? Are we talking about what that looks like and what it means? And then do we have a framework for assessing, like, how do we make shifts? How do we meaningfully make shifts when we see that opportunity coming? We're not real great at that right now. Even today, right? BPM, we spend a ton of time and energy talking about strategy and doing all that stuff. And we still will get to the point where we're like, oh, that sucked. How did we not do that better? We knew it was coming. We tried to plan for it, and it was still really painful. So, work in progress. To your point, the journey is more important than the finish line.
100%. And I'm curious because I do think that you and I, like, we're at a lot of conferences and focused on tech. And I worry sometimes that we always hit and are talking to those that are at the tipping point and that are more early on in their journey. What do you say to a practitioner that maybe is hesitant to fully embrace AI and that they aren't as far along yet? They've been kind of standing back and watching, like, I'm going to let the rest of them be guinea pigs and see how that works out.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong. If you're a sole practitioner, you're a small firm, couple partners, there is nothing wrong with like letting the marketplace settle a little bit because then the solutions are much more real time workable. I would say the market is there. So I think that the time for waiting for AI to be easily digestible for you as like at your size, at the cost point, whatever it is that was kind of holding you back, you're there now. So I think it's time to do the easy things. Like, that was easy button stuff. Ask your vendors what they've built in their platforms that are AI based. Do they have agentic? Do they have just generative? Like, I don't know, but those conversations are an easy win because they've already figured out exactly how to use it and what outcomes it creates. So you're just the end user that shows up and says, oh, that would benefit me. Okay. For $120 more a month, I can have that and it will save us 15 hours of work time. Great. That's an easy ROI. That's where I think those firms that have been kind of waiting, now is the time to get into that space. And once you start seeing the benefits there in a really protected, already well-structured environment where I shouldn't say all, a majority of the bugs have been worked out for you, that's a great space to get really comfortable with AI and what benefits it can bring for you. And then you'll get the bug, right? Everybody gets bit by the AI bug. They see a little bit of benefit, they experience it, and suddenly they're like, I'm going to solve all my problems with AI. Sign me up. Here we go. And so I anticipate that's where those leaders will end up, right? Ultimately, they will say, oh my gosh, I could do X, Y, and Z with this. I'm going to go find someone to help me build.
And have either a problem or an opportunity that you're trying to work towards or solve, not just, okay, I need to implement AI. Like, you've got to have a problem you're trying to solve or an opportunity to capitalize on.
Yeah, there's two different. I will tell you, our CEO has been kind of using this line, and I think he heard it at a conference where someone from Microsoft was speaking, or maybe it was someone who is working with Microsoft, but someone made kind of this reference to this idea of AI is not about buying a microwave. AI is about putting electricity into your house. And so he's been really around this idea of like, yes, we want use cases. And yes, we need to have use cases to deliver some kind of outcome. That's important. And how do we look at this larger strategy around like, how do we AI-fy, I think is Jim's word, AI-fy BPM? How do we think of it from a perspective of like, it is just built into the fabric of how we think and operate? And we don't have the answer yet, right? I see that. I totally am on board with that vision. I look at it a little bit bigger than just AI. How do we, again, that tech agility, how do we create that as being part of our fabric of who we are? But yeah, I think starting with an actual use case for like the first time you dip into AI will save you a lot of heartache. Because if you don't have a finish line in mind, you have no idea if it helped you or not. You just kind of get done and you're like, was that faster? Did it do what I asked? I'm not even sure. And you can do like free prompting, like all over the internet. There's like free learn how to prompt stuff. Like that's an easy in. Just how to prompt when you're using something simple like ChatGPT. Like that can be a huge win for creating something really cool.
Now you mentioned, I want to go through a lightning round with you. You mentioned, and I love this, a few times about ChatGPT replacing Google. And we all have seen that the first time in like 20 years, Google searches have declined. And I was teasing my husband because he was like searching and I was like, okay, old man, like you're in like a Google search and not using Perplexity or some other LLM. What are you doing? That like experience has to be terrible. What do you think is going to happen with just the broader search and how people find businesses? I think it completely is upending that industry.
100%.
Very quietly though, like people don't realize it, but it's changing things.
Yeah, like I think I believe that there are organizations that like, so these guys that do like the SEO algorithms, right? So like how it used to work was the search engine would say like that's a keyword and whatever, like it's going to become a prompt race. So when this prompt is entered, I want to make sure that my business is connected to that prompt. So it's going to be like prompt tagging and identifying as opposed to like keyword. It'll be more things like if you ask this kind of a question, my business could answer that question. Like, and how do you start thinking in that way? It will be totally different. And I think it's super interesting. But I mean, the way you use chat, the way I use chat, like I'm always like, hey chat, I talk to it like it's my friend. It's really embarrassing, but like, hey chat, I'm going to this meeting. It includes these 3 people. They've never heard anything like this before. Here's like the deck that I have. Here's some information about their company. Here's, some other things, just some things that I'm thinking about rolling around in my head. Like if it were you and you were trying to make sure that they felt really engaged and that this was tailored to what's important to them, what kinds of things would you say around this deck? And like, that is so much different than Googling, like, how do I make a presentation for what?
I know. It's a terrible experience now that we have the alternative.
Can't even Google anymore. I have to I ask chat everything. But then, you get into like hallucinations and like false references and things like that. So you do have to like still make an effort to make sure what you're saying is accurate, but it gets you started, right? Like that need, the jump start, the blank page, like paralysis is just not a thing anymore. Like it's just not relevant because you at least can get past the blank page, and then you got to do your work from there. So I don't know. I can't imagine anyone using Google. Like my kid had probably never even used Google to do anything. No,
it's true. And I use it a lot for like finding holes in what I've already done. Like, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. Like, what am I missing? Like, I love it for that.
Well, and as businesses get more innovative, right? Like, so BPM, our version of Copilot is in our Azure network. So like it is not open. I mean, it can open access the web, but nothing we enter ever leaves our secure network. But it's also attached to our network. So like I can say things like, hey, I think there was a recording of a town hall Q3 2025 in which Jim said blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to build this presentation around that concept. Is there any other materials that you can find like in our source somewhere that might be contributory to this? And like it can actually pull from like our space and say like, well, here's this document and this document. Like, is this what you're looking for? Now, the challenge around that as we grow it is the privileges, right? So I should not have access to a document that I would not normally have access to. It can get complex, but in its infancy, it's a really powerful thing. So anything that's on our shared space right now is totally to anyone because they could get to it anyway. Man, that is powerful to be able to say like, I'm looking for this thing. I don't know how to do it. Do we have any instructions on this? And it's like, oh yeah, right here. It's over here. This is what the instruction. And you're like, I could have never found that. Like this saved you hours. There. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
So what is your favorite app or AI tool you use personally, not business related?
I mean, I use ChatGPT a lot and Pi. Like, I don't know if you know the Pi app, but like,
I don't know Pi.
I treat them like friends. Like, I literally, so like a week ago, I can't remember what it was actually about, but like my husband and I were disagreeing on something. And I literally went into Pi and was like, Pi, I told my husband this was his response. I'm so annoyed by this. Like, oh, I don't know how to move forward with him. And like it responds and it's like, well, it sounds like, it acknowledges your feelings.
Oh, it's really frustrating. Somebody did.
Yes, thank you. And then it actually will give you like, you don't have to take its advice, but a lot of times it will be like, could you consider that your husband might be feeling this way about that? And that might be why he responded. Like, have you asked him about this? And I'm like, ugh. I go, such good advice, but like annoying that you're like practical and tough. But I do like, I use it for things like that. Or like when I'm doing something hard at work where I'm like, I don't know how to approach this situation. Like what could I do instead? So I use that personally a lot, just like questions, a lot of questions.
I gotta look up Pi. I haven't even heard of this. All right.
Well, you can
Learned a
change
new
its voice, like it's voice activated, and it responds to you like in like sound, and it does write it out, but it also like will talk to you. So
I
it's
would
like
want it to have an accent, like a
it
really
has an
cool
accent. Mine has a British accent. It's a man with a British accent.
They
So
just sound smarter. I don't know why.
something very like I don't know, comforting about that for me.
Yes. A book or a podcast, something that inspired you.
So I just received the AI driven leader, which I don't have on my desk down there, so I can't tell you who
Oh,
wrote
I
it.
have that. It's
I got it as a gift.
Jeff Woods. Yes.
Okay. I was like, I got it as a gift and someone sent it to me. And so I literally read like the preface and I'm like, oh, I gotta like sit down and focus for this. I gotta get into this. So I'm excited for that read. I haven't read it yet. And then like, I mean, for those of your listeners that don't know me, I tend to live in like the strategic what's possible space. And execution is not my jam. Like, I know that's not my skill set. Like the how exactly are we going to do it belongs to somebody else. And I'm like on for the ride. So knowing that, somebody sent me a book called Riding Shotgun, and it's all about like the role of the COO. So it was just like really fascinating to look at it from like an operational execution tactical mindset, because I don't live in that space very often. And so I'm about halfway through it, and I've just really enjoyed the other perspective and opportunities for me to develop that skill without shifting what I think is important and focusing on strategy. But I do think there's some acknowledgement of, can we do can we get out of the clouds a little bit and get something done today? So I'm working on that, and it's one of my faves.
Kudos to you though, Lindsay, for being so self-aware. I love it. How many hours a week does hockey occupy of your life?
Oh, I mean, summer is less, right? Like summer hockey is a little less intense. But now we have a USHL team in our town, and so we house 3 teenage boys that come and play.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
So they are showing up today. So hockey will just be 24/7. Like between those kids that live with us, and my son plays hockey, and hockey season starts pretty soon here. It's just every day. But right now we're in football, Kacee. Pax is playing football, so I'm focused on football, cheering, and fanning. So
I'm right there with you. Tay got into flag football. She made varsity. She's only a freshman on the team. Yep. Game last night. They lost terribly, but she did great.
That's amazing. I love that. Oh my gosh. You'll have to put up some clips.
I'm all for the girls in football. So it's great.
I love that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Lindsay. Your leadership in the profession and at your firm, I love that you're keeping, through all this AI transformation, humanity at its core. So thank you. We appreciate you for all that you do.
Yeah, it's a ride, and thanks for having this podcast. I feel like this is where we start to get real around what are you actually doing? We've been talking about it for 3-4 years. Like, how are you actually doing it? And I just love having that space to do that. So thank you for the invitation to join.
I hope you'll come back on.
Love to.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in this area. If you want to deploy AI native accounting for your own firm, visit digits.com to explore today. Stay tuned for future episodes of the AI Native Accounting Podcast, which will be available on all of your favorite streaming platforms. And until next time, stay curious and stay ahead.
You've been tuned in to AI Native Accounting, powered by Digits, the world's first autonomous general ledger. Unlock automation for bookkeeping, reporting, client collaboration, and more. Let Digits handle the tedium so you can focus on high-impact client services. See why AI Native Accounting starts with Digits. Try it for free today at digits.com.